I've got allergies pretty bad, and I'm not hurting. But if I sound like I'm about to cry,
That's because we made you so
Just
emotional.
let it
it's
out,
not because you're here. I mean, it could be because you're here.
Look at that picture looking
it's-
over your shoulder, man. It'll do it to you.
Yeah, I look at that, and that stays here all the time.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
guys just happen to come in here, but this picture's always up of you too.
I saw it in
That's good.
TR's interview. I was like,
Yes.
what's that picture, dude?
Other people come over, and it's just they're like, "Why is there always a picture of Dan and Shay in here?"
know, dude.
So it's the allergies.
Yeah.
I was in therapy 2 days ago, and I have a real problem with crying, not because it's a masculine thing, but because it's a vulnerability thing, and so I always tell my therapist, like, I would love to cry more, like I would love to not be embarrassed of crying, and not because it's a masculinity thing. I don't have a dad, but because again, I'm just scared of like being weak and vulnerable. And my allergies got so bad that my therapist thought I was crying, and I was like,
So you're having a major breakthrough?
Yes, it was like, and he was like, see how easy this is.
This is working.
And I'm like, what? See, you're emotional. Nobody's judging you. I'm like, I got allergies, bro. So that's where we are right now. Good to see you guys.
too, man. Thanks for having us.
It is. I mean, I'll start. Dan, you're sitting closest. I guess I haven't seen your hair in real life since you cut it. I saw a video that maybe Caitlin had where there was a deer in your yard and your dogs were chasing it.
Oh,
And it
dude.
was the first time I saw your hair because you ran out the security.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
Camera.
That was ridiculous.
Your hair looks good.
Thanks, man. I'm just trying to steal your hairstyle.
I
Trying
don't.
to do the thing, dude.
How big decision to cut it, or was it we're finished with this season? This hair was growing for this season. Let's cut it.
Yeah, I feel like it was just a fresh start, honestly. Like, the music sounds a little bit different. It was an opportunity to, start from scratch, and the long hair was really a hassle. It was a pain. I mean, it was a whole thing.
Did you have a routine you had to do?
Had a routine, especially before shows or before like a TV thing. It's like over an hour's worth of, you wash it and you put something in it, let it curl up a little bit, and then you curl it a little more. It was just a process. I was calculating the amount of hours a year I was spending on my hair. It was just way too much. I was getting weeks back when I cut it.
And probably a lot of money because you have to buy products are not cheap.
No, they're not.
Even for my hair, they're not cheap. And I have.
See, I wish I was a hat guy. I look at all these other acts and they're hat guys. I feel like that takes so much pressure off. You leave the house, you just throw on a hat. It's like, man, that guy's killing it.
Or even just a temporary hat guy or an occasional hat guy.
Yeah.
Sure.
So if you're not feeling it, you just throw a hat on.
Yeah.
But not all the
Occasional hat
time, because
guy's
then you're
nice.
committed to hat. Because if you're like Dustin Lynch, I'm
Yeah.
always like, Dustin hates wearing that cowboy hat every single freaking night he's performing.
And he's carrying it around in that little
Everywhere,
hard shell case.
or somebody is, and he'd sometimes like to be like, I just like to either have my hair or wear a ball cap.
And
But
he has
you-
good hair too.
Yep, but you either got to be full hat.
Yeah.
You can't
You can't be somewhere in the middle. It's
hat.
it's like Eric Church and his sunglasses.
Mm-hmm.
When you see him without it, you're like, how dare you? You're almost offended.
I
like,
saw-
how dare you not wear sunglasses in here?
We were at Pebble Beach together. Eric Church and I. We were. There was before a par 3. We were both playing this par 3 like championship, and I was talking to Eric because he lives near
Yeah.
me. I don't know, say where anybody lives. Nobody knows where I live. So we were talking about that, and I just remember thinking, this is not the Chief. This is
Yeah.
a guy in a golf shirt that's just like Eric. It's just Eric. Wasn't the chief, you know?
It was the most relatable when I saw him golfing, which I feel like when you first get into golf, I know that you've like seen this before too. When you're first getting in, it's super intimidating because you just think everyone's way better than you.
Right.
And then you get in, you're like, so everyone just kind of sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember watching him. I think it was at the Pebble Beach one, and it was just like they went to him right on camera on TV and the broadcast, and he just hits, a stinger. But it was like
stinger, he topped the ball.
That's what the kids
Yeah.
say. It was just a stinger. And he just hit it like on the ground, like 30 feet in front of him, and it was incredible.
I remember
It's the most
asking him,
relatable thing.
Like, what's your handicap? And when he said it, I was like, oh, you're like me.
Yeah.
That's what I remember thinking. And
Yeah,
I don't
okay.
really consider Eric Church to be anything like me, but I was like, oh, you're like me.
Got it. Okay.
I just want to do all the superficial questions up front. So, Shay, at this point, you're freaking ripped. You're fit. What's the deal? Like,
Trying to get there, dude.
What are you doing now?
So it kind of started out, I was just fasting. I'd cut out alcohol. So I've been a year sober. And I didn't really set out to do that. And I was talking to Jake Owen about this because I know he went sober, and asking him kind of about that. And my life is just better without it. And I started 6 months was kind of my goal of like, I'm not going to drink and I'm going to do some fasting and just eat whole foods and cut out sugar and all that. And that worked. In 6 months, I think it was, I'd lost about 60 pounds. And I was like, well, that was awesome. And I just felt better mentally. And so after that, I kind of started actually going to the gym with a trainer and started trying to put on muscle. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. My goal is like by next, summer, if we go on the road, to just be offensively ripped, like a Riley Green. He's offensively
it's annoying.
ripped.
We're like, we have to
People
act
are
like,
upset.
we can't even address it. We're so annoyed by it.
You can't even talk about it, where it's like,
Yeah.
I don't understand why you even walked into this room. Like, you should have wore long sleeves. Like, we were all talking about it. It's the elephant in the room kind of ripped, like a Tim McGraw ripped.
I love the comments when Riley Green posts a picture. It's like, yo, man, my girlfriend's on this app.
Yeah.
Like, that's the level you got to get to.
Well, it's also, too, it's Riley or any of even Sam or whomever. You're just sure they get it all the time because they are so ripped and so good looking that you're like, I don't even want to talk about how good looking or even mention it because they have to get it all the time.
It
so
wasn't
you're
the
just
first
annoyed.
time they've heard it that day, and
Right.
maybe in that hour.
Right.
Like, people probably just like, I imagine they get texted of like, hey, dude, like, what's the deal? You know what I mean? Why are you so ripped?
Just cutting all that stuff. I fasted a bunch.
Yeah.
Depending on, I try to healthily fast.
Sure.
Depending on what project I'm working on, or even for clarity in my mind. Like I do
Yeah.
find that when I'm fasting, I do think clearer, and I don't know if it's because of what I'm not eating or because of what I am eating or the hours that I'm eating. And I've read a lot of different studies and I've read about European soccer teams that have done a lot of fasting.
Yeah.
Because it's way more of a European thing than it is an American thing. But
For sure.
Mike D, who produces this and is like my main guy, I mean, he lost 100 pounds by just going, I'm not drinking sodas anymore, and walking, and it went from there. Were you able to see small growth like that, and that's what kind of kept you in?
It was, for sure. The fasting thing is super interesting because I've read a lot on it. You do all this. I did research on it of like, what is fasting? What are you getting from it? Is it just to lose weight? And at first it was just like the weight loss. And I was also walking. I would walk. I told myself if I could walk 7 miles a day, that would do something, just to see what it would do. So I was walking 7 miles like on a treadmill or outside, depending like weather. And I would usually end up just walking on a treadmill for 7 hours, and I'd catch up on my shows and all that kind of stuff because I never had that time to just be in one place. And it just it fell off. But yeah, I saw just the small growth. Mentally was the first thing I think that kind of was improved, where I was like, I can remember. It sounds stupid, but like I was remembering stuff a lot better, and I didn't think that I had like a bad memory. So like short term, especially, like I was just like, oh, that's kind of strange. Like I know I can remember that whatever it was, like phone numbers from back in the day. Like my brain was just functioning at a higher level.
Maybe it's from no sugar though too. Like
that's a big one.
Because sugar is such a freaking.
It's a killer,
I
dude.
love it. It's the great.
awesome.
It's awesome.
God,
I mean, I would
love
eat
it.
all day, every day, and sometimes I do. But it's the worst.
Yeah.
And it's gonna. What I've said for a long time about this is, and I could be wrong, but in 10, 15 years we're gonna look at sugar, maybe 20, the same way that we now look at cigarettes when we're like. They just doctors smoked cigarettes and like said, this is the cigarette I would recommend. Like
100%.
sugar is awful and awesome at the
I
same
could literally
time.
talk about that all day long because I went down the rabbit hole of like sugar and what that is, and I won't spend too much time talking about this because I'll spend an hour talking about it. But the processed foods and things that we have on the shelves, I mean, it's like 99% of the stuff that we have, it's so much junk because it all turns into sugar at the end of the day. And it was wild going down that rabbit hole. And my sister did a diet called like the Candida diet, which is like basically cutting out all sugar. And she had Crohn's disease, and she's talked about this publicly before. Like she's like had Crohn's disease, Lyme's disease, and ulcerative colitis. And she did that with the cutting out sugar completely and anything that turned into sugar. And she got rid of literally all of those things. And it's pretty wild to look at, using food as medicine rather than kind of the first instinct to go to, straight medicine. It was wild to just cut out sugar, what that did for her personally and what it did for me. I mean, just thinking clearer and being motivated. And I think fasting also has a lot to do with a lot of the energy I was feeling and just like the focus. But there's all kinds of science behind that. But it was really, I started to see it in small ways. And then after 6 months, it was a little bit every day, a small percentage. You look back in 6 months and I just didn't recognize myself. Now, it being a little over a year, I literally just don't feel like the same guy. It's kind of wild. I mean, I look completely different, but it also just like the way that I think and approach life and the way I approach music, like I'm obsessed now where it's like I want to take this whole deal as kind of a athletic feat, to be able to be a musician, and we're playing shows, we're running around on stage. Like I want to take that kind of approach like an athlete would, taking it very seriously of like, all right, our fans deserve, our best performances. And to do that, I need to be at my peak performance of whatever that looks like. It doesn't have to be getting shredded, but just being prepared and making sure that I'm, taking the time to work on myself in those ways, and mentally is a big part of that. All those things go together, I think.
Yeah, mental health. You feel like it's affected your mental health in a good way?
100%.
Yeah.
And I think one thing I noticed and learned is that your gut health and your mental health, the two are so connected that I just didn't realize that ever in the past. And as I kind of gone down that rabbit hole, it was like, okay, I'm eating healthier and now I'm thinking clearly and I haven't had a panic attack in a year and a half. And it was like, there's probably something to that, There
was a little relief probably a month or so ago because, Mike, this will be when the album is out?
Week before it comes out.
The week before it comes out. Okay, so most people listening to this, they won't have heard the record yet, but some of it's out. And so Dan had sent me the record and was like, hey, he did the thing that I just love the most. He was like, don't tell me how good or bad it is. Just tell me what song sticks out, because I hate when people are like, is it good? Because all they want is whomever it is. We all want this as humans, right?
Yeah. Validation.
Yes. And so then I have to be like, it's good.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's going to be fine regardless of who is sending it if it's at this level. But Dan was like, tell me what songs stick out. So I definitely take my time with it because I don't really do that. I don't listen to a lot of music that before it comes out. Heck, I don't listen to a lot of music anymore now because there's just so much. And so I just really have my stuff. But I do love you guys and definitely respect you guys a bunch. And so Dan's like, check it out. Don't tell me what's good. Tell me what sticks out. Just straight up. And I was like, I told Caitlin, I was like, I'm so glad Dan asked me to do it that way.
Hey, you have permission always to be honest, though. You know that.
I
but
do.
Yeah,
I do.
Though. Yeah,
but it's like everything's going to be good because you guys aren't going to spend the time. Not that you're not going to write bad songs, but you may write a bad song, but then you may not cut the bad song. And if you do cut a song that maybe isn't good, somebody's going to go, I don't think that should make the. So there's just a lot of gates to get through. So I knew what I was going to hear was going to be good. So I listened to the record 3 times all the way through, and I'm just like, what pops? So I sent Dan a couple of songs. I was like, this is my favorite song. This is my second favorite song. And then I just kind of waited for Dan's response. And the one that I sent him, I said, and you'll vouch, I said, Save Me the Trouble is like the best. It's the best.
Yep.
Like that is such
Coincidentally,
I didn't know it was a single. Had no idea.
We announced it as a single like 3 days later. So.
Had no idea.
Yeah.
And so I love that song. I mean, it feels sonically different enough to hear a maturation, but not that you're running from creatively who you guys have been.
Yeah, that's exactly why we chose it as a first single.
Like that's what it felt like to me.
Honestly, it was so validating when you said that was one of your favorites because we've got so much respect for you as a friend. Your ear for music. You took a chance on us before anyone else, and you take a chance on a lot of new music, and you've broken a lot of artists in country music in your time here. And not just trying to gas you up. It's just the truth.
Please keep on though, Mike.
I will.
Yeah.
The shoes look great. The shirt looks great. The house, man, it's awesome. But yeah, that song, when you said that was one of your favorites, or that was
favorite.
That
it was number
out.
1 to me. Yeah,
It's amazing.
We felt the same way. We felt like there was this moment we were trying to go back and forth, pick the first single, and that one was always at the top of the list to us. And there was this one epiphany moment. I'm sitting there, I've got the phone on the island in the kitchen, and it's playing, and I heard Save Me the Trouble, and I was like, how could this not be the first single? And that was what I texted everybody. I was like, how could it not be? It was just something about that song that stood out, maybe not necessarily above all the rest, but it felt like it didn't alienate what got us here in the first place. If you've loved Dan and Shay records in the past, it has that. It has the harmonies. It has the, big explosive chorus. But I feel like it was a taste of the evolution, what the rest of the album sounds like. And there were some other songs on there that may have been a little bit more organic or maybe more country than some of the stuff we'd done in the past, which I think it fits cohesively on the project when you hear it in context. But if we had come out of the gate with something like that with no context, I feel like it may have been too much of a shock. Save Me the Trouble just felt like the right first call, and man, it's been flying up radio charts crazy. So
yeah, definitely
good
felt
ear.
A graduation, but also you didn't change countries.
Totally,
you're still in the American school system. I mean, it's so yeah, loved that. And then it's called Bigger Houses. So what's the why? Just why?
As far as
why
the
name
of the album.
Sure.
Well, whenever I'll go back, I guess, to that song to give it context. But the first time that I heard that song, we were kind of done with the record at this point. We had kind of had all the songs were done, and Dan had written this song "Bigger Houses" with our buddy Andy Albert, and I don't know, who else was on that song?
Andy, Jordan Minton, and Jordan Reynolds.
Yeah. So a bunch of our co-writers, the boys. and I hadn't heard it yet, and he was like, had sent it over. And usually Dan, prefaces any song that he writes that I wasn't on. He'll preface it like, I don't know if it's like that good or whatever, but and then he'll send it. And I'm like, it's probably going to be phenomenal. If he's sending it to me, I know it's going to be good. And I was actually back home in Arkansas, and I was visiting my family, and I was on the farm that I grew up in, and there was just something about hearing it in that context of a place that I learned the lesson the first time of the lesson that is in that song. That was what I was taught growing up, of where happiness lies. And it was just it hit me really hard. And I was like, man, we have to record this song. Like, this is, it's my favorite song that we've ever done. I can say that now after we recorded it. There's just something about it that is so genuine and authentic to my upbringing and kind of where I came from, that I just connected with it on a really deep level, even though I didn't write the song. It was just like, man, this is, I would have liked to think that if I was there in that room, like, these are the things that I would have wanted to say. And it just resonated really hard with me, which I feel like on this entire album, it was just very representative of like where we're at in our lives. And even the heartbreak songs or the fun songs, it just felt very much where I'm at. Songs like Then Again and Always Gonna Be, it's just where I'm at in my life. And it just, I feel like Bigger Houses sonically, it was pretty stripped back of how we, that song was written, of how kind of we wrote this entire project kind of just on acoustic guitars and a piano, and like there wasn't any tracks like the entire time, and nothing against that. That pendulum swings back and forth always. But we just wanted to kind of do it how we had done it in the very beginning of just getting together and telling stories. And I feel like that song in particular really, it connected the entire album. It was a song that was very representative of where we were at in our career and our life and the things that we had been through and where we were focused. And I feel like, the overall message of the song is, the thing about happiness I've found is it don't live in bigger houses. And obviously it's not just talking about bigger houses. It's the things that we chase after, There's nothing wrong with, having nice things and whatever it is. We all like those things. But it's when you start to set that bar and you start chasing after that high. When you're chasing after a feeling, that is an unattainable goal, because that bar is always going to get raised. It's like, all right, you win 3 Grammys, you can win 6. Somebody's won 20, somebody's won 30 Grammys. It's like there's a bar that you can set for yourself in these experiences that you almost come to expect that are just, you're never going to reach that goal. And I feel like we had to have that moment where we looked around and we're like, okay, you know what? We need to bring it back, reel it back a little bit. Step one is to appreciate what we've gotten to do in this incredible career that we've had and be thankful for that. And know that moving forward, if we can find joy in the process of making this album and getting to do something that we love, we can't control what happens after that, but we can control the process. And if we can find joy in that, we don't have to worry about what happens after that and winning these awards and having all these hits and streams and whatever it is. If you can find joy in those small moments, you don't have to worry about the rest of it. And I just feel like that song, it just really resonated with me, and we just felt like it was the perfect representation to kind of place the badge of, okay, this song represents this entire project as a whole, and that just needs to be the name of the album. And it's been really cool so far. I feel like just the badge of Bigger Houses, I'm really proud to put that song as almost a stamp on the album to let people know like what this album is going to be about and what it represents.
I remember watching The Drive, the social media document, whatever you want to call it, content.
Yeah.
I texted Dan. I was like, hey, man, that was awesome. Like, felt a little uncomfortable. Knew a lot of the stuff that was going on, too. Our families are close.
Sure.
But I was like, wow, you got that felt so, I'll just say good, because it was real and it was honest. But sometimes you can see when it is a bit strategized.
Sure.
But that was uncomfortable in the best way. So I guess my lead into that is, you guys were going through a lot. You decided to share it a lot with each other. Totally. Why did you decide to share that then, and why was it important to put that out there?
I think selfishly it was good to share it. The vulnerability, putting your vulnerability out there to the world, I feel like is helpful to us, for personal growth, for growth in our relationship with each other. But if you look back on the course of our 10-year career, everything's been pretty squeaky clean, and for the most part, that's what it is for artists. I think there's a big authenticity movement right now, which is amazing. You'd love to see it. You'd love to see people putting their actual heart out there on the line, and I think that's important for fan connection. But for 10 years, it was like only posting the best of the best on the highlight reel, on social media. And I know that's the nature of the beast, but we felt like if we were going through that, there was likely somebody else. And also it gave context to this music that was about to come out. So there is a little bit of that. But we felt like if we were going through this, there was somebody out there, one of our fans, somebody in the industry. And that was the most reactive piece of content we've ever put out there. Not necessarily in views or virality, but the amount of industry people, managers, artists, writers, just friends from back home texting me like, man, that was really brave of you guys. Like, that was inspiring to me. Like, that, inspired me to speak up or communicate with somebody that I hadn't communicated with in a while. And I don't know, it was just like the messages that we got. They were long messages too. It wasn't just like, love you guys, come to Cleveland. It was like paragraphs, like people explaining what that meant to them. That was a powerful piece, but it was true. It was honest. It was genuine. That moment, that night we talked about, at my house in, what was it, March 2022 or whatever. That was the most pivotal moment in Dan and Shay's career. Like, more so than any award, more so than any song, any show that we've ever done. That moment changed it all, because for 10 years, life gets in the way. When you're going so hard, how we were working hard when we started out, 150 shows a year, you're on the road constantly. And if you're not going out of your way to work on that relationship, especially in a duo is such a difficult configuration. I mean, historically, a lot of duos fall apart because it's 50-50. I think it's harder than a marriage. It's like, it's equal split and you're on public display at all times. And if you're not being open with each other and going out of your way, being proactive with communication, things can fall apart. And, we say in a trio, there's a tiebreaker. Solo artist kind of paves their own way, but a duo, you really have to work at it. And we weren't working at it. There was nothing. People were like, so was there like a specific incident or was there a fight? There really wasn't. And we've said that before too, that maybe that was the problem, that there wasn't a fight. We weren't communicating. If something was bothering us, or, I was being an idiot or whatever, Shay was doing something, we weren't speaking about it in real time, and we were just like letting things fester. And I think that's where things kind of got in the way. And then throw in COVID, where, we're on and off the road for that 2-year period, and it was just such an emotional roller coaster. It was a lot of story to tell. And, Shay and I, once we got to this place after that, we can talk more about that in a sec too, the come to Jesus night at my house conversation. After that, it just felt like the air had lifted. We were like in such an amazing place. The closeness of our relationship, of our friendship, stronger than ever before. And we would get on the phone. Shay would, come over the house for what we said in the drive was true. Like, we made this goal to hang out more, to spend more time together, 3 days a week, whatever. Shay comes over, we pick up a guitar, right? If we don't have an idea, we just hang out, just whatever, watch a movie, do something, just hang out, spend time together like we did when we first started. And then Shay would leave and we'd call each other and be like, dude, today was sick, or if we wrote a song, it'd be like, that song's sick. And we didn't even know we were making an album at the time. It was just like, and we didn't know if we were going to still be a band. It was like, let's just see how this goes. Like, let's reconnect. Let's be friends again, And we would get on the phone for an hour and a half. Like, there were some nights I remember pacing around my backyard, getting bit up by mosquitoes. And we're talking for like, I think it was like 90 minutes or something when I'd look down at my phone, just like, dude, this is like, just feels like a new era, a new chapter. Like, these songs we're writing are so fun. Like, what if we like told this story to the world? And then you get asked when you put out a record, the label says, hey, let's do a day where we go do liners. Hey, I'm Dan and I'm Shay and we're Dan and Shay and this is what our album's about. For each song is track by track. I was like, I think it'd be really special to tell our fans, to give context to this album, like what we just talked about. I was like, if somebody had been recording this phone call that we just had, just us talking about what we had been through, what we're going through, what we're dreaming of, like that sums it all up. And we just one day, Shay was like, dude, we should just like go for a drive, like get in a car, go out to Kingston Springs. We spent a lot of time out there when we first got going. We couldn't afford a meal, so we had friends who would feed us out there, and it was a beautiful place to hang. So we got in a car, they rigged it up, put a couple GoPros in there, put some mics in the car, and we just drove. No managers, nobody sitting there like prompting any of the conversation. I don't even remember where we started, but it was,
I think we got lost about 6 times on those back roads, and we legitimately drove for hours.
Yeah.
And it was like, it took a second to get going because we were, we knew that we were being filmed, and so we had to like settle in, and we're like, all right, dude, let's just talk. And then we talked for like 3 hours, and we used so little of the content. It probably took them forever to go through and find usable pieces, because we really just ended up having that conversation of just like talking through exactly because that conversation literally sparked. I was like, man, I wish people could just hear. That is the context of the album, what we just had on this phone call. And I was just like, let's just go for a drive. And it really, one of these days we'll probably put out some more footage of the drive, because it was
Director's cut, all of it?
the director's cut, all of
Yes.
it. That'd be a movie.
Half of us is like, is that a cop behind us? You know, like stupid stuff like that. But.
Yeah, half of it was, there was like this big camera like going on. I was making sure I didn't hit anybody while filming this. That would have been really bad. But it was awesome to kind of also rehash that. It was another one of those moments in our personal lives that we were just a couple of guys out in the middle of nowhere driving, talking through the craziness that was our career over the last 10 years.
Sometimes when I make a change in my life, it's got to be because it gets to a point that is so drastic that I can realize it.
Yeah.
Where it's, oh, I'm not in a good place. I mean, when I went to on-site, I wasn't in a good place. So it took me to actually hit, we'll call bottom.
Sure.
You know, when my mom would go to rehab, she would hit bottom, and then she would go, would you say in you guys' relationship, because you got to hit a bottom to get to actually have the desire to get out of it or to get back in it?
That's a great point. If you never hit that rock bottom, you might not realize that something's
Right.
wrong or that you need to make a change. And
Is that it for you guys?
I absolutely hit rock bottom. I'll, speak on my side of the story, and, Shay can speak on his. But that date was December. It was like first week of December of 2021. So this was when we finished the arena tour. You work your whole life to get to a place where you can sell out an arena tour. We did. We put that on sale in October of 2019, when 10,000 Hours with Bieber came out. Put this tour up, sell out MSG. We sold out Staples Center, 2 nights at Bridgestone, like all these bucket list milestones. We're riding high. It's amazing. And then boom, COVID happens. It's all gone. And it's like, man, that'll mess with your head. So we're juggling that for a couple years. We finally get back out there. We did the tour. Shout out to our team and, everybody out on the road, the promoters, and the fans for hanging on to those tickets. Like it was a tremendous success given the circumstances. But I think I was chasing a lot of the wrong things, speaking to the bigger houses thing a little bit. Comparison. We all know that comparison is the thief of all joy. And I think we all get caught up in that, especially when everything is so on display with social media. You can look at stats, you can look at likes. Everything is just so right there for you to compare yourself to the best of what somebody else is putting out. And I think I was caught up in that in a crazy way on social media. I was, being a content guy because we're too stubborn to have somebody help us with it, which we need to change that at some point. But, we're on the biggest tour of our lives, and I'm like, well, crap, we sold out last night. Let me make this video of us doing, we're in Tulsa at the BOK Center, and I'm like, we got to get this content of us like jumping in the crowds here. And that stuff's all cool, but it was like all to like let the industry know that we're out here doing well. And I was chasing that too much and not enjoying the moment. I was like maybe looking forward too much to what was next, and I just really spiraled. It made me resent music because I wasn't doing anything that was related to music. It was like all in the name of trying to get content. And it was like I was not appreciating the fact that there were fans there singing the words back to us, and it wasn't appreciating the fact that I was getting to sing with my best friend or play with our band who we grew up with. Like all these incredible moments passed me by. And December, came around 2021. We finished the tour in Boston, and I got off stage more like defeated than I had ever been. And you know how it is. It's like it's really hard to be in this position, and I don't want to sound like I'm complaining about it, but I think that's why there's a lot of mental health issues and depression in our industry, because if you're really struggling with something to the public, you feel this responsibility to be a superhero. You feel this responsibility to be unbreakable. Like on stage you have to be like, this is the best night of my life, when in deep down you could be like, I'm really hurting right now. And this was before we knew to talk to each other, or to be open about it with our fans. This is a whole new chapter in an amazing era. But that moment, I got off stage and I was like, I'm done. I don't know if I could ever do this again. And I didn't really say that to anyone. I think Abby kind of knew it, but she is so patient, so incredible, so encouraging with me to kind of work through these issues, work on myself. And I came home from that, and I like literally laid on the couch. I'm always going, always doing something, just like you, man, always on the move, always grinding. And that was like the first time in a long time that I just kind of laid there for like 2 weeks to process everything. I was like, I might be done. I might retire, whatever, move back to my hometown, figure it out. But like I'm burnout. It was like the most extreme burnout I had ever felt. And I felt like I needed to get myself right first before I made any progress with Shay and our relationship, whether we were going to keep the band together or whatever. was like, I needed to get myself right on a personal level. I need to fall back in love with music. And I, after doing a lot of soul searching, I realized that previous year I'd written 4 songs total. 2 of them were Christmas songs. 2 of them were for another band. And that is the thing that brings me the most happiness and fulfillment, is creating, being in the studio, making music. And I wasn't making any music. And I was like, maybe I start there. So I went out on this little trip there's a band called the Band Camino, good buddies of ours, killing it right now. They did a little writing retreat for their album out in Colorado. I was like, you know what? I'll head out there with the boys. It's no pressure, like not writing for Dan and Shay thing where we're saying like, okay, we've had these kind of hits, we need this thing. It's like just a little bit more free form. And if I don't get a single song out there, I'll get to go skiing. Like, it'll be fun. So I wrote a couple songs, and I was like, this is fun. Like, there's no pressure. We're not writing for a specific, Dan and Shay thing, like just making music for the sake of making music. And I came home, did the same thing with a couple other buddies. I was like just trying to do it a couple days a week, and I was like feeling so elated. I was so happy. And once, that went on for a couple months, and I just got to this amazing, amazing place, and I was like, you know what? I got to get myself right with Shay. We were about to go out on tour with Chesney, which is Stadium's bucket list tour. I mean, that's like, for a support slot, that's the pinnacle of it. And we had that booked. And I came to this place, I was like, I got right with myself. I owe it to myself, I owe it to Shay, and I owe it to Dan and Shay, the entity, to figure this out. Whether we end this band and we ride off into the sunset, we should go enjoy playing in these football stadiums. Or this could be a launching off point for the next chapter. And I was like, I got to hit Shay. We got to have this conversation tonight. So I called Shay, and I was like,
did you know that's why I was calling you? Like, did you?
No, I mean, and I hadn't talked to him, and so this was right. It was kind of a conversation I had kind of knew I knew he, kind of how he felt of like, I knew his burnout. I didn't know the extent of what was going on. But he texted me and was like, hey man, you want to come over tonight? And I was like, okay, he wants to talk about something. I thought it was like, this is going to be kind of it. Honestly, in my heart of hearts, I was like, I think that this might be the end of our band. And I was like, yeah, man, when do you want to do this? And he was like, I can come over there right now. And I was like, oh, okay. He wants to talk like right now. And then I was like, I mean, talk about a full-blown panic, because all this stuff started coming up. And I was like, oh no, like I was not prepared. This was like a normal Sunday night or something. And I'm like, I told my wife, I was like, I'm going to meet with Dan. And we didn't really talk about it. And we both kind of looked at each other like, I think I'm going to go end my band with my best friend that I haven't been close with in several years. It was just kind of this whole understood, like, this, we'll deal with this one. We'll deal with the wreckage when I get back, And I just remember driving over there, just like sweaty palms, being like, dude, this is heavy, And I was like, this is getting me emotional, right? This is to teach you how to, this is just my
Thank
allergies.
you for giving me an example.
It's not a big deal.
Vulnerable. Thank you.
But I was like, man, this is like the last 10 years of my life is about to end, and this is we're about to, whatever. And I get there and it was just like this, what's up, dude, And I remember we sat there and Dan just like starts to apologize for like the last 10 years. That prompted me to apologize for stuff. And, that's the long and short of it. We sat there until I think I got over there at like maybe, I don't know, 7:30 after I put the kids to bed. I went over there. We stayed up and talked till like 3 a.m. and just hashed through all of these things. And a lot of that was like, all right, we need to really appreciate like what we've gotten to do, whether we continue to do this band. It wasn't like we were dancing around the fact that we both were kind of feeling like we don't know if we're going to do this anymore. But it was like, man, let's ride off into the sunset. Either way, Dan and Shay is always going to was something that Dan said. He was like, we're always going to be a tattoo on somebody's arm, always going to be a first dance song. And I was like, that's great. And I remember like, cause this was kind of after we had our like really heavy talk, and we had kind of gotten the tears out and all that kind of stuff. And I remember like watching him like grab his phone and type in that title, and I was like, that's a great title. And it was just an incredible night, man. It's like, I feel like a lot of people are scared to say, like, oh yeah, we got together and then we cried. Like just a couple of friends, that's pretty lame. Like no one would want to say that out loud, but like it was, man, a lot of tears were shed and a lot of stuff was really figured out. And it wasn't like we figured out all of our problems, but acknowledging that it mattered enough to both of us that we would try. And it was just after that, it was our plan of action was to, all right, let's hang out 3 times a week. Let's get together and let's have no agenda.
So you focus on the fundamentals of the relationship more than what the relationship could do.
Exactly.
It was, let's make sure we do the relationship.
Let's be friends again. Because I feel like that's something that people don't see from the outside. It'd be very easy to be like, yeah, we're in a band. And I feel like every duo in history, especially in country music, I mean, we've had so much devastation, that is wreckage that has been left through different duos, friends of ours that have very publicly happened. And what you don't see is like the behind the scenes stuff that is just like their friendship is, if that gets wrecked, it's just a matter of time. That's a ticking time bomb of, your band separating because you're just going in different directions. And even though Dan and I are such different people at the core, like on every level, that's the reason that it works, is because we have extreme respect for one another. And even when your lives are kind of going like this, it's so important to kind of realign yourselves. And even though I've got 3 kids at this point, Dan's got dogs, we've got our families, like we have our own responsibilities, but acknowledging like, hey man, I respect the hell out of you for what you're doing. And no matter if I believe the same thing that you believe or not, I respect what you believe. And we both have this band in common, and we have our fans in common. And I think the world needs to view that too. It's like we have so much, separation in our country and all these things. And it's like, no matter, I feel like when I was growing up, that was kind of the message. Like, all right, you believe this and I believe this. We're going to scream at each other and then we're going to go grab a beer, And I feel like that's kind of been lost on the world a little bit, of the value of a good fight. That's the next video that's coming out. It's the follow-up to The Drive. It's called The Fight. It's going to be really good. But I feel like it was, we had to learn to respect each other enough to have those hard conversations when we knew that if I have a problem now, like it's even happened in the last, 6 months or so, where we're like, okay, this is, I think this is how it should be. No, I think this is how it should be. We talk it out and it's like, awesome. This way is clearly better because we both care. We want the same thing. And we learned how to focus that stuff and really put a focus on communication, just like in any marriage would be. If you just don't talk about something, that's how us guys most times think I fixed it.
It's our issue too.
Yeah,
where I don't say anything about it.
Yeah.
I let it live, and then I just keep pushing it down. But my wife knows she has to go and get it because I will not.
Yeah.
And it doesn't put her in a great place, and I don't like that I'm like that a lot of times. But and also I feel like I can fix it in my head myself.
Sure.
Totally.
And just I'm gonna go and fix it. I'm not even gonna tell you the process, but I'm gonna come back and it's gonna be fixed.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that gets me in trouble. But you're right. It's a relationship. You guys' marriage, also your marriages to your wives, one-on-one's tough regardless of the situation.
It is.
It's
very difficult.
Do you guys one-on-one on stage? Do you have, and maybe they're not absolutes, but do you have signals like, "Hey, cover for me. I need to go and pee," or maybe not pee, but
I wish.
Like on the show,
we need to.
Me and all my guys, they know they know if I'm holding up a finger for this, if I twirl my hand for that. At this point, we've been together almost 20 years. We've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
If I do a little of this, they know, go longer, go shorter. I got to turn my mic off. What is that relationship like with you guys, or even a quarterback and a wide receiver, where you're on stage, you're performing, you're playing the game, but you got to cover for each other, but you really don't say it?
I feel like it goes unsaid. I feel like it is so lockstep. We find ourselves like Jinx, so many times, thinking the same thing, saying the same thing. On stage, I feel like the chemistry, it's just like the show. I mean, we've thought about, should we have a hand signal if, one of us needs to get a drink? But I know when he needs to get a drink, and same goes. It's just the eye contact. We lock eyes, okay, cool. I know something's going on with his in-ear pack. He's going to run over. I'm going to get on the mic and find somebody with a sign in the crowd and buy him a minute and a half or whatever. Those kind of things, just you spend that much time together. It's and also it's a chemistry thing, man. It's something we noticed when we first met. I'd never felt that making music with somebody before. In the writing room, we would finish each other's sentences.
I'm doing it right now.
Right now.
Crazy.
Yeah, right now. It's wild.
It's crazy. I'm in
wild.
too. Oh my God, I do it too.
Isn't it
Oh
insane?
wow, oh no. Dan and Shay and Bobby.
Yeah.
Oh no,
We're
now
all
we're a group.
And now Mike's involved.
Oh,
It's
God
crazy.
dang.
No, man, it's a lot of it goes unsaid. We're learning that. I could probably say this. We started taping The Voice. I know it airs next year. But we started taping The Voice, and there's one button. We're in this big chair that's connected. And there's one button, and we were like, dude, we got to come up with some signals, 2 taps on the leg. And we had these grand plans we were going to make, because everything's cameras in your face, you're mic'd up, everything is fair game. And we had these grand plans to make signals whenever we liked something, we were going to hit it. We kind of forgot to do that. Time got in the way, and I feel like it's still so lockstep. If we're like, we look over, cool, and we hit that
I
button.
can read the panic on Dan's face.
Yeah, my hands are twitching. I'm like, I don't know about this. I hope Shay doesn't push the button, and then we don't do it. But yeah, man, you spend that much time with each other, and there is just a intangible chemistry between the two of us when we're on stage or we're writing or singing harmonies. I know when you're going to go for a high note, or I know coming out of chorus too, if we've been singing a lot and you're going to go for a chill version, I'll back off on the harmony.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Those things
It's almost creepy sometimes. Like it's like the twin thing. I mean, this has happened, especially on The Voice. I noticed it the most because we were doing a lot of, you do a lot of interviews in between, the whole deal. It's a whole process. And it was so funny because we would literally say the same thing at the same time. And I was like, we do this a lot. And it's like we can't even use those takes because it looks like, we say even like responses. It looks like it's been
rehearsed.
It looks like rehearsed.
Sure.
Like, I mean, there'll be things like, someone's talking to us and, we're in an interview and we're like, for sure. At the same time, and I'm like, what is happening, dude? It's like, we're just kind of like look at each other like, totally. Because you spend, all of your time with someone and like, we're in the same conversations and you just kind of learn. It's like a marriage where you're like, you kind of pick up on each other's lingo and things that you say. And it's like almost to a creepy point, like at the same times, like when someone gives you a question, because we're getting those questions all the time. And so it's like, our responses just get ingrained in our brains, and it's kind of weird. And sometimes,
but it's awesome.
It is awesome.
Awesome. We did it again.
Oh my God,
man,
dude! This is what we gotta add a picture to that.
Oh my God, no one's gonna believe this. When you started putting this project together, and you weren't writing to really write a record, you were just writing to write, and you were gathering good songs, basically. If I'm right, Always Gonna Be was the first song from this project that made the project, like as far as like a timeline of all of it, the first song you wrote?
Yeah, that was the first song we wrote for the record. I think it was the first one we recorded, first one we had a mix on. Shay mentioned it earlier, but that night when we were talking, we were like, we got to figure this out. Our fans, the industry, everybody that we've come in contact with, we owe that to them. They deserve that. Because Dan and Shay, it's always going to be a tattoo on somebody's arm. It's always going to be a first dance at somebody's wedding. It's going to be a moment for somebody that whether we break up or not, Dan and Shay is always going to be. And like Shay said, I wrote that down on my phone, and I was just like, that's a special sentiment. And, obviously we evolved it. We brought the girl into the song and, just made it more of a life thing. But we're really proud of that song, man. It's a special one, and the fan response on it's been amazing. But, yeah, that one kind of set the tone for the rest of the record, aesthetically, sonically. I don't know. That song is just kind of like the backbone of the record. That, Bigger Houses, and Then Again, I would say are kind of the ones that...
Those three songs are kind of... Those three connected. I mean, when I think about the album, those three songs, and obviously a lot of the other songs are in the middle, and there's some of my favorite songs not in that list, but those three songs kind of wraps up the album to me, because just the lyrical content and sonically of kind of where this project was going, and we didn't think too much about, like, we knew that there would be somebody being like, what, these guys are trying to be super country now, and it's like, this is the stuff that we grew up on. Like, we've been doing this a lot longer than you've been hating on it, and it's like, I think that this kind of traditional country sound has come in, and that very naturally, there's some songs on the record that are a lot more country than we've done in a minute, but that's what we've been writing since the very beginning of our career. And long before we met, it's the stuff we were influenced by, Brooks and Dunn, George Strait, Alan Jackson, Kenny Chesney, all these people that we were influenced by. And it was just so much fun and it was interesting for me too, to kind of take a back seat and watch how Dan's production has grown over the last 10 years. I mean, it's like we started at 507 and we were making these horrible, like demos. They were atrocious. And then that just evolved into him. I mean, Scott Hendricks says he has the best ears he's ever heard. And Scott Hendricks is the most decorated producer in Nashville history and probably of all of music. I mean, he's this, he has crazy good ears and is so good at finding songs and all this stuff. So for him to say something like that about Dan is just one testament to how good he is. But watching that evolve and kind of hearing how this sound has evolved for this record, because it's a lot more country than stuff that we've done in the past. It's a little bit more of our first record. And a lot of people have kind of referenced that, like, this reminds me of, early Dan and Shay with what we fell in love with you guys with. And I think that is just because on that very first record, there was no agenda. It was two guys that were very poor getting together and loving music and writing songs together. And we stripped everything back to that. We just were getting in the room and we're like, all right, let's write a song, not because we have to, but because we get to do this for a living and because we love to do it. And it just kind of turned into this thing, and the sound that came from that was just very organic. And it wasn't like, all right, let's try to make this. It was like, all right, we're going to get in the studio. We're going to play these songs. Most of the time we would get in there in the studio and just like play it acoustically. Sometimes we didn't have a demo for a lot of these songs. Played it on acoustic guitar, and we went in and we played it. And it was just these incredibly talented musicians, and it just turned into what it turned into. And I'm so proud of how it turned out, and I'm so proud of how Dan has evolved. And this is definitely your best work so
Thanks,
far.
dude.
And it was cool though as a fan of music to have a record that sounds like this, that I'm like, yeah, I'll put my stamp on that for the rest of my life. You know, I am so proud of this album over any album we've ever done. I've loved, obviously they're like your kids. You like your songs, you know, you listen to them and you're very proud of them. But I think as a whole, not just the songs and what the product was at the end, but the process that it took to get there. I've never been more proud to be a part of something in my life, because it changed everything for us, just the process, but also just in my life. I've said this a couple times recently, but it's something I realized throughout our band and throughout like our life as a band. You know, we grew up, obviously we both got married, and then I've got my kids and all this stuff, and I kind of had my family life, and then there was my band life, and there were two very separate things. You know, you kind of live your life in those two separate train tracks. And it was, for the first time, I remember after hearing, you know, Bigger Houses, getting the cut back for that, and Always Gonna Be, and Then Again, in these songs, and I was like, this is the very first time that I feel like my personal life and my band are fully connected. And this is exactly what I'm going through right now. I'm going through what Bigger Houses is talking about. I'm spending summers now in Arkansas again with, you know, back on the farm, and I'm listening to these songs being like, this is the stuff, like whether it was like a lesson that I learned or like the girl that I dated in high school, like I'm here in this place of these lessons that I learned. And it was just an amazing final puzzle piece of the evolution that I've kind of been on personally. And it all kind of came together perfectly. And I don't know, it's such a new step for Dan and Shay, our band, but also like our lives. Like I don't feel the same that I did, you know, a year and a half ago. I feel like this is such a step forward and a breath of fresh air. And I just think that it's so genuine from us, and it's so authentic to us that we were never worried about like, what are people going to think about this? Are they going to think it's too country, or are they going to think it's too this or that? And it just never crossed our minds, because we loved it. And at the end of the day, if you love your music and you're proud of it, that's the win. And if you know your fans are going to love it, I'm not worried about what people on the outside, if they don't like it, they don't like it. But if you try to write an album that you think other people are going to like, the haters are going to like, of like people being like, this is not country. Like if we're trying to make a record for them and we end up just hating it, then like you said this before, like then everybody hates it and you hate it. And so what was the point in that? And I think just trying to approach this record with a very authentic, passion for wanting to write songs that we loved and that our fans would love. The result that came out of that, even if this record never came out, this is always going to exist in our hearts and our minds. And I know obviously it is coming out, but I think our fans are really going to feel that throughout this entire project, not just in a couple songs. I think they're going to feel that through what it took to get here.
It feels like, at least for me, when I was like the most beautifully, creatively reckless is when I had nothing to lose.
Sure.
Because what are you going to do wrong? Who cares?
Yeah.
You just do what you want, take big chances. But then once you start to have some success, well, I don't want to mess it up. Then you have more success, and you're like, boy, if I mess it up now, I'll really. So then you start to adjust what you're creating and how you're distributing and who's listening and why. And all of a sudden you're doing 12. I struggled with this for years and years. But then with you guys, it feels like when you finally kind of recalibrated yourselves and yourself, it was almost back to that point where what do we have to lose now? We got to the low.
We learned to let go.
Yep. So it's like we almost broke up.
Yep.
So why don't we just go do what we want to do? Worst case scenario is, well, we do what we might have done anyway. But it feels like that's that beautiful creative place that you guys are in now, where you just get to create and you're not putting pressure on what you might lose, but instead you're kind of putting it on what you might gain because you're being truly you.
Also with shows too, we've only played a few this summer, but we're going to play a lot more next year. But playing shows, I feel like in the past it was always like, okay, it's got to be picture perfect. And we do take a lot of pride in making sure we're choreographed. It's like if we spent money on this light hitting here, like we should make sure that we're standing
that
there.
light.
Yeah, exactly. Also, the fans deserve it, man. These ticket prices, like, they're expensive. It's expensive to go to a concert now. People deserve the best that we can give them. But I feel like in the past it was always like this overly competitive thing, trying to be like, all right, we got to kill it here at Madison Square Garden tonight so we could come back and do MetLife next year. Like, we got to just keep going. Now I feel like there's this sense of freedom when we get on stage. It's like, dude, this is sick. Like, our shows have gotten longer because we get on, in between songs, and we're like, man, this is unreal.
Look at you guys.
Between every
Man,
song.
I
Every
love
song.
you.
Can you believe it?
There's some guy like, just play tequila.
Believe it, dude. You just said this 11 times.
It's exactly what it is. So maybe our showmanship's gone down, but we're having more fun up there than ever before. And I don't know. I feel like being in that place is more sustainable than anything. I feel like when you let go like that, you make a great album or you put on a good show, and that's what gets you to MetLife, or that's what gets you to win the awards or have success. And if you don't, at least you had fun in the process.
And at least you created something that you believed in. Because, again, I got into a place, too, where I was like, I don't even like that much.
Yep.
And when it would not do well, I would be like, it didn't do well and I didn't like it. Yeah. I'd rather it not done well and I'd have loved it. Because then at least I would have loved it.
That's exactly it. At least one person likes it.
Yeah, at least I would have been like, that really was me. And because then you're just questioning, like, if I just done it the way I really wanted to do it, like if I had TV projects like that, where I'm like, I didn't want to do it like this, and I kind of fought, but then I gave up fighting for it, and then it would just do okay, and I would go, man, I didn't really like it, and everybody else didn't either. At least I wish I would have fought for what I really liked.
Yeah.
For sure. And
maybe
I'd
that
rather
comes
take
with
that
age,
pressure
too.
Like,
Yeah.
I'd rather take the pressure of, like, rather than try to blame falling on somebody else, like, I would rather be like, okay, and this happened on Tequila. Our label, a lot of people were like, we can't push this ballad, after, we had pushed another single, and we thought it might be a hit, but we knew it was going to take a long time, and we were like, man, this is not it. And when I heard Tequila for the first time, I was like, this is a single, and I don't care who is going to try to stop me. Good luck, because I believe in this so much. And it was a ballad, and it was like the wrong time to probably put out a ballad in most people's heads, thinking like, I don't know if this is going to work. But I feel like I was so okay at that point where it really felt like we have nothing to lose. Yeah. And it was like, nah, dude, we're going with this. And I really don't care what you guys say. This is the song. Because I know I can stand up on stage with conviction and sing the hell out of the song and make people believe it. I'd rather do that. And it's my fault if it fails. And I'm okay with that. I'm fully okay with that. If you stand behind your art, you're willing to kind of go down with the ship. But at least I'm the captain,
right.
And I can go down proudly with that.
You're happy to sink your own boat than sink on somebody else's boat.
True.
Exactly.
True.
And that was our biggest hit, and it's like, not that you're trying to, be freeform for the sake of gaining the success of that song, but I just think that you're much more likely to have those authentic moments when you, like you said, you just let go and you're like, I don't care if someone doesn't like this. I love this, and I'm willing to do that. And honestly, a song like Save Me the Trouble was very much that way for me. I felt like it was the perfect, like, it felt like it really kicked down the door rather than like, I hope you guys like this offering that we have. It was just like, nah, this is sick, dude. Like, I think this is absolute flames, and I'll tell everyone that on the street if they'll listen to me, and I could stand behind that and be like, I really don't care, dude. Like, you hear these notes? These are sick. Like, I love this. Like, I'm going to go perform the hell out of this. And that was a good feeling of like, I really don't care if people like this or not. I really hope they do, and my insecurities are going to really come out if they don't. But I love this song, and I'm okay with going down with that ship. And again, we had our biggest ad day that we've ever had on radio. And again, I didn't do that as a formulated thing. It just was like, we have nothing to lose. Like, I'm proud to put my stamp on this. And that's it's a really fun place to be, because you just stop worrying about what people are going to think about it. You just kind of like, no, I'm doing this. And I feel like you get less heat from haters when you kind of approach life that way, because at least you're doing it on purpose.
And they know they can't affect you that much if you're not.
Exactly.
If you're just kind of like, suck it.
Yeah.
Suck
it, dude.
Okay, 3 final questions. Just talk about The Voice for a second, because, I don't know, you just Dan and Shay on The Voice as the main chair flippers. Because
chair flippers.
Yeah, you guys had been on before though, but right, as like helpers. Have you ever been on you've been on Blake's team?
Yeah, we did the mentor thing.
Right. So when I first saw it, I was like, oh, that's cute. They're going back to men. Then I was like, oh my, I told Kate, I said, oh my God, they're freaking going to, I was so pumped for you guys. So how did that come about?
Man, that's one of the craziest opportunities. We're very grateful to the team at The Voice for extending that invite. We got a text one day. It was like out of the blue from our manager, Jason. He's like, hey, I would really like you guys to meet the producers of The Voice. Like, they love you guys. And it was like, sure, man. Because, that kind of gig is like everybody in every genre is going after it. I knew they were trying to replace country, but I knew they had already gotten Reba. I was like, there's no way they're going to get Reba and another country act. There's so many. I mean, it's just like who's who. All those chairs are all like A-listers and then us. We went to this meeting. We went to this breakfast. I think it was at the Thompson Hotel. Sweetest people ever. And we were ourselves. We told them the ideas that we had. We were like, what if there was like this double chair? We shared this big chair and one button. I feel like that's a cool dynamic that hasn't been. I think they had done it maybe in Australia or another country. They hadn't done it in the U.S. I felt like that was a cool idea to shake up The Voice a little bit. And just, I don't know. There was something about us being ourselves there, and I think it did well when we were on with Blake. Blake was like the king of The Voice, so anybody who goes on with Blake's going to look good. But we didn't expect anything. A couple months went by. I was like, surely they gave it. They probably already taped the season.
So you didn't hear for a while.
We didn't hear for a long. And this was, to give context, this was kind of after we had really like gone through everything and we're like doing, crushing it as friends again. This was like, honestly for me, I don't know if you felt this, but like I never dreamed of or had that dream to want to do a show like this until we got that text message, and I was like, yeah, it's my only dream. It's my only dream. I've never dreamed of something more in my life.
Every day he was group texting me and Jason,
God,
like, yo, any updates? It's like, the meeting was yesterday, dude.
Bro, I've never had so much anxiety on something. And it was good because thank God that we had prepared for this, because I had lost all this weight and was like, all right, I'm glad at least like if we're going to be on TV, it's going to be now and not like a year and a half ago whenever I was, eating everything that my eyes touched. And I was like, as soon as we had that meeting, it went really well. And we're like, these people are super, super sweet. And we did go into that meeting being like, man, it is what it is. Because the conversation was like, not like, hey, they're auditioning you for the part. It was like, would you guys ever even be interested in this? And it literally started in my head. I was like, yeah, I mean, I think that would be cool. And by like 7 p.m. that night, I was talking to my wife and I was like, if we don't get this, I'm going to be wrecked.
He bought a house in L.A.
Yeah,
It's a whole thing.
I mean, I was so like, I didn't think that I would want to do this, but now that I'm thinking about it, this makes so much sense. I feel like we would be so good at this, and I would really enjoy this. And I was like, pacing. It took months for us to get an answer at all. And I think I was going back to Arkansas at that time, and my routine for like the few months that we didn't know anything was like, work out in the mornings, think about The Voice for 6 hours, hang out with the kids, and then go to bed. And then text in the middle of that. I'd text you guys about 17 times, being like, any update? Have you heard of them? Have you been following them to their house or anything like that? And so it was a whole thing. But after I think I was in Arkansas when we got the news, and Jason had texted us, and we kind of gotten some updates. We found out like, okay, Reba, she's taken the gig. We knew that she had an offer out there, but they had met with everybody, like these A-list celebrities, and we knew we were having conversations with, and I was just wrecked. Like my stomach dropped, and it was like, man, that's a real bummer. Like, why did you even text us in the first place? Why did we have the meeting? Because I was like, I was living life. We were absolutely killing it, having so much fun. Just everything was good again. And then you drop this on our plate and dangle it in front of us. And if we don't get it, it's going to really suck. But Dan and I would have like these therapy sessions every night. Like, hey, it's okay. If it doesn't happen, it's like no big deal. Maybe it's for the better. We probably shouldn't even do The Voice. This is a horrible idea to do. And it came through. And long story short, we got a text message. And I think Jason said, do you have time for a call? And my stomach, I about crap my pants. And I was like, this is going to be
one way or the
best
other.
or the worst day of my life.
Yeah, one way or the other.
And honestly, I think that there was an Arkansas, I can't remember, maybe a baseball game. I don't remember what it was. It was a Razorback game that me and my brother-in-law were like watching together. And I'm already like, you know how it is. It's like I get so invested in Arkansas Razorback sports that I'm like, it doesn't matter if it's badminton. I'm like, it's a pretty good season for them, And I remember I was already like on high alert, and we got that text, and I was like, oh my God, this is going to be crazy.
Did you guys test it all? Did you test it all? Or
No.
They just met you?
No, that was why I didn't think we were going to get it.
Yeah.
We never did.
Yeah, I thought they had gone down the road with somebody else. Maybe the mentor thing we did, and we'd been on the show a bunch of times performing and stuff before, but yeah, it was crazy. And then once they told us, it was like dragged on for months after that for the announce. It was like, guys, we're thinking they'll announce by Thursday, probably 3. We should have a graphic by like Wednesday at noon. And it was like Thursday at 3 came around and we had no graphic. And
until there's no announce, it doesn't feel like
exactly.
they're actually committed
100%.
to it.
And
there's
this
still
was
time for them to pull out.
This was like a long time. It was like we should have something by Friday. You know how it is. It's like we'll have something by the end of the week. We'll have like an official like announcement. And then because we were trying to like balance that. We were about to announce the album. We were about to put out a new single, and it was like, it's getting kind of dangerously close. And then it did happen within like a week of each other because I was like being quiet on socials, trying to let it die down and do the thing. And then it was like, oh crap, the Voice announced like 3 days before the single. I was like, it's too big to not post about it. So
and we were asking too, like for pictures of the double chair, because we were like, I don't know what this even looks like. And I remember texting our day-to-day manager. I was like, have you heard anything? Like, we were supposed to have a picture of this thing like a week ago, and they're like, yeah, they've made it. It's a whole deal. It's gonna be awesome. I'm getting you the picture tonight. And so like, I'm just like waiting. Finally, like we get this email, and I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be so sick to see like our name on the back of the chair, the whole deal. And it was this cartoon animated rendering of what the chair was gonna look like, and I was like, guys, is this a joke to you? All right, this is the only thing I've thought about for the last 7 months. How am I supposed to, go on without this? But
I would have been so anxious with no announce because I would
the
have
no announcement.
Totally.
I've had this before.
It
It's
changed
like
their
if they
mind.
haven't announced it, that means they're not fully committed because
right.
until you go public,
Yeah.
they don't have to say anything if they change their mind.
yeah, once they went public, it was on. We
That's
were
awesome.
chilling. Yeah, it was great.
But it finally happened, and Jason had called us, how would you like to be coaches on The Voice? And I was like, the color drained from my face. I passed away for a couple minutes. Arkansas lost, and then it was a great night.
It was St. Patrick's Day, actually, because Abby and I were at the bar with Megan Maroney and her friends. She doesn't even know
That's right.
this. They were down at the beach. We were down there at the same time, and they texted us, and they're like, hey, guys, we're, like, doing the St. Patrick's Day. And she's, like, half our age, so they can, they just got out of college. I feel like they can drink on a different level than Abby and I. We're like, we're kind of tired. It's like 3 PM. We're getting ready for bed already. They're like, come down to the bar. We went down to the bar. It was a long day. We'll just say that. They were having a good time. We were too. And Jason called. It was raining. It was a whole thing. It was nowhere quiet. St. Patrick's Day, people were popping off. And I like stepped outside. I was like, hello. And he was like, how would you guys like to be coaches on The Voice? I was like, I can't tell anybody this.
Yeah.
So I couldn't even tell Abby for like 4 more hours.
Dan ran into the bar. He's like, listen, everybody.
Yeah.
Have you guys heard of The Voice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, no.
Like, no, you haven't.
No, that's cool, man. We're grateful for the opportunity. It's been fun so far.
You and Abby opened 2 questions left. You and Abby opened a room at Wags and Walks, the pet adoption center. It's in Hermitage, right?
Yeah, and thank you guys for contributing in such a big way. For so many, it's amazing, man, what you guys do to help out with WAGs.
So what's happening there with the physical situation at WAGs? Because for a long time there really wasn't one.
Yeah, it was all foster based. So and that's a tough thing, man. Trying to find fosters, especially some of these dogs are in really, really tough situations. And we've done the hospice foster thing where a dog's only given a couple months to live, and I mean that was one of the hardest things we ever had to do. And there are a lot of great people out there who do that. But up until, I think, maybe a month or so, it was actually the night we released Save Me the Trouble and announced the album. It was like the most chaotic moment in our household. They'd been working on fundraising for years now to open up a brick-and-mortar center. And it's unbelievable. I mean, the amount of people that donated, that chipped in, that offered their services, for these fundraisers that they've done, just absolutely incredible. This town really rallied for them, and they busted their asses. Her, Catherine, everybody on the team at WAGs really worked hard. And they've saved thousands of dogs at this point. You've been to these fundraisers. I mean, they're doing the thing. They open up a spot, and it's just unbelievable. They've got, like, all these kennels where dogs can decompress safely, quietly. They've got veterinarians who are donating their time that are there at all times, 24/7, taking care of these dogs. And it's a really beautiful thing, man. It's awesome, and they've hosted a couple adoption events, and I think it's a really good. Abby's actually there right now.
Really?
Yeah.
One of our dogs is from there. In case, for those listening that don't know, Eller's from Wags and Walks. Okay, final question, and it's just gonna be a word. But what's the word that you would assign for each other right now at this stage? It's just one word. And here's what I want to do, so you guys don't hear each other's word and then change it. You're gonna say it at the same time, and it's gonna sound like a real cluster. But then we'll go back to it.
Okay, so this is my word for Dan.
For Dan, right at this stage of you guys' career, friendship, life, what's the word you would assign to him? Same for you. No hints.
Mine's kind of, I have it in my head. It's kind of weird. I'm going to have to explain it after. But yeah, it's good.
We will have
good.
time to explain it. Yes.
Like I did the other night on stage about my. We'll tell that story after we get off the
hardest man in country
The hardest man in country music. Let's get it out of the way. Hold on, we got to say it. The other day Dan said something very kind on stage. He was like, "This is my favorite singer in all of music," or something like that. And I was trying to hype him back up, and I was like, man, if we're handing out compliments, like, y'all make some noise for I was trying to say the hardest working man in country music, but this is in front of like 18,000 people. It was like our biggest sellout ever in New Jersey. And I was like, y'all make some noise for the hardest man in country music. and I was like, yeah, they were like, oh, he said it. And you didn't know I had no idea that I didn't say it, that I said that until afterwards. They were dying when I got off stage. Like, you said the hardest man in country music. So that was weird. So that would be my word for you.
Hard?
Hardest, yeah.
That would be hard, yeah.
Okay, I'll think of a better one.
Ready?
Oh, God. Okay, give me a second.
I'll give you a second. We got nowhere to go.
It's true.
Did you see our pool? There was a crack in our pool. All the water freaking went out.
Is that what's happening?
Yeah. Did you see it was low? It's
I saw it was a little low.
Back
I was
up.
like, man.
No,
it's hot out.
it was completely empty.
No
because
way.
like a rock had got caught in like a tube or something. And again, there are much bigger problems. But I'm just giving you a story.
Are
while
you
you're
filling
thinking
it back up
right now?
Yeah.
And it takes
That'll
days.
cost you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's people are like, oh, but it's fancy. No, you take a water hose and you put it in it and you turn the water hose on.
Dude, when we were filling up, I'd never had a pool. We're just gonna keep going for hours here while you figure your word.
I'm thinking of a good one.
I'd never had a pool in my entire life. And John Esposito, Espo, formerly ran Warner Music Nashville, signed us to the record label. One of the greatest mentors, one of the greatest friends we've ever had in our entire lives. We both grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and no one had a pool. There was one kid in our high school maybe who had a pool. He was the rich kid. Both of us, we bonded over this. It was like I asked Espo one night, we'd been hanging out in his office, drinking Macallan. I was like, when did you know you made it? Because he's had an incredible career. He's been all over the place. I was like, when did you know you made it? And he was like, being from Western Pennsylvania, it was when I got my first swimming pool. And he's not wrong. It's like, I knew nobody who had a pool. It was just the rich kid or whatever. And I was like, because I don't spend any money. I'm so frugal to a fault, to the point where it's like detrimental to my life. But we built a little swimming pool in our backyard when we moved into this most recent house. And I got in a raft when we were filling it up. Same deal, put the garden hose in, thought about asking the neighbors to throw their garden hose in to split the water bill a little bit. They wouldn't know it hit them. And I sat in a raft as that thing filled up for hours. There's a video, like a time lapse of me just coming up deep end. Just rising, dude. It was crazy. But yeah.
Okay, you good, Shay?
I got my
We've done
word.
pool talk.
Yeah,
All right.
pool talk.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Grace.
Proud.
Okay,
Wow.
let's go. Dan,
I'll start.
You said proud. Go.
Proud, it's because I'm proud of you. And that's a weird way to do this as a word to describe somebody else, but I truly am. I'm so proud because I've seen it firsthand, probably only second to your wife. I've seen your growth as a human being, as a friend, as a singer, as a musician, as a participant on this earth. I'm proud of the work you've put in, and I'm proud of all the progress that you've made. You're a changed man. I mean, and it's not just the physical appearance. It's just the way you approach life. It's the way you approach our band, everything about it. I feel so happy to be alongside you on this journey and to be your biggest cheerleader. I'm proud of you, man.
Thank you, dude.
Yeah.
And your work for him was erect. What was it?
Hard.
Unbelievable. I was hard. Yeah.
Right.
Was it erect?
Erect is what you said. Yeah.
I didn't know I was gonna tear up. Allergies are bad here.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
It's something about this room.
I chose the word grace for many reasons. You have shown a lot of grace to me over the last 10 years of waiting for me to finally get to this point. And you've been ahead of me in that game of health and all these things. But you've also shown yourself a lot of grace, which takes a lot of guts to be able to do. I know from just going through this myself, it's a very easy thing to kind of put yourself down and be like, this is mistakes that I've made in my past, and this is because I have felt this way as well. But things that you've done and decisions that we've made either together or whatever it is that you feel like affected, the rest of your life. And I've just watched you deal with that and have grace for yourself and kind of forgive yourself for, thinking a certain way or whatever it was, and having grace on me and also receiving grace from your wife and from my wife, on both of us. I feel like grace could be described for kind of the journey that we've both been on, but I'm super proud of the journey that you've been on, and thank you for having grace with me.
Love you, dude.
Finally getting there. I love you, dog.
Doing it.
Okay, so whenever you're listening to this, it's if you're listening to it on the day of, album's out in a few days. People listen to this thing forever. Album's out now. Just pick whichever one of those little selections of my voice you'd like to have. But it's called Bigger Houses, September 15th. It's great. I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it. I would just say nothing.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
I wouldn't lie. I
Like,
just wouldn't say.
it's out.
I would just go, yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, it's out.
I do
How
a
are-
whole bit in my stand-up. We just shot a special last weekend, and I do a whole bit about what I do if an artist comes in and plays and they're not good,
Yeah.
and what I say and how I have to say things, and I kind of tell the audience like what they should listen to me for.
Do you
Yeah.
worry about that, like with artists that are coming in now too?
I'll just change it.
Yeah.
I'll just change
Now
it.
I'm gonna go
Yeah.
listen to it. It's like he said that in our podcast.
for
dude.
sure.
What the hell, Bobby?
How are you doing, man? I know you're so
Good.
good at bringing the best out of everybody else, but I don't know if anybody ever asks you that. You work harder than anyone I've ever known. And
Yeah,
you, I mean, you
that's not
got
true.
I
sports
think that is the
podcasts, you've got
truth.
music podcasts, you're doing the stand-up show, selling out all these big theaters, you're still doing the morning show. I mean, that's so much, and among other things. How you doing?
I'm tired. I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're about to take a break. So,
That's amazing.
and if I would take a break, I would just stay here and sleep.
Yeah.
But we're gonna go on a trip.
There you go.
And
That-
so-
nothing says rest like travel.
Well, I don't have kids though. I bet it's a whole
That's
different
true.
monster
Yeah.
with kids.
That's true.
But that's for a whole other podcast.
Sure.
Called the Dancast.
Let's
I
go.
like that.
Yes.
Let's go.
See,
We'll come
next
back
time
in.
we need to interview
We'll
you.
flip
I'll come
it,
with a whole bunch of
and
questions.
you guys just have me here crying.
I
but
always
it'll
wonder
really be
because
allergies.
we have to go do one little thing, and we're like, "Oh man, I'm exhausted. Can we get like a ginger shot or something to wake us up?" But you're going constantly.
I think this will just be relatable content to us three, and even Mike, who sits here, is that you just have to adjust. And like I wake up in the morning, I hate it. I never wake up and feel great.
Sure.
Never. Not one time at 3 o'clock in the morning do I wake up and go like, oh, what a beautiful morning.
Yeah.
Ever. But I get better at doing quality things, not as when I'm not feeling my best. So then when I am feeling my best, god dang, I'm rocking.
Yeah.
So then I just try to feel my best more. So then once I'm able to see how good I actually am when I'm just crushing it, I try not to kill myself all the time because I feel I can really do exemplary work.
Yeah.
So, but it's taken me to really just drive myself into the ground to realize just doing things for the sake of doing them and having a bunch of stuff, not as good as doing stuff really well.
Sure.
With a
Or
few.
things that matter.
Yeah. And I'm really trying to dial in on things that I really love doing more than
Sure.
I've turned down 4 or 5 TV shows that I'm like, you know what? Maybe, but I may just hate it.
How do you do with breaks and with rest?
I don't.
Same.
I'm
hard.
insecure. That's why. It's not
Yeah.
because I feel like I have a lot to offer the world. If I don't work, I feel like I lose momentum. If I lose momentum, how am I going to get going again?
Momentum's a big thing.
Because
it's
I feel like,
Yeah.
why would anybody want me if I'm not popping? So I
Yeah.
got to stay popping. So I got to keep going. Not the healthiest, but I'm the healthiest I've ever been because my wife has really
Absolutely.
been there. And I mean, we fight about it sometimes.
Yeah.
Where she has to like, oh, you're out of your mind. You're working too much. You're crazy.
Yep.
And I'm like, you don't understand.
Yeah.
And I turn into a child.
Totally.
You don't get it,
You don't
Mom.
get it.
Like,
This is
"Come
all
on,
I
Mom."
do.
Yeah.
And she's
Yeah.
like, okay, when you're dying, do you think people are going to care about that you needed to go out and do this TV show that's, about the great? It's like, no, you don't even want to do it. So if you don't want to do it, and we don't need the money,
Yep.
and it's not really, why do it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, pretty good.
We
I
can
start
tell you all
crying
this
now.
is-
Yeah, come on.
That's what
This
it
is
is
it.
till the end.
Ah!
I'm super happy for you guys. Love you guys,
Thank you,
obviously. We've kind of us three, we kind of all came in at the same time. It's kind of the class. We're getting older but smarter, and
At least it's going that way. Because it could be like, here we are, older and dumber and a lot less successful than we were when we met.
Yeah.
and we could be having this conversation with no microphones.
Yep.
And nobody listening.
Yeah, these mics are hard, dude.
The hardest mics in country music. We did it again.
Yeah, we did it again,
Oh
dude.
my god!
I can truly
Okay.
say that you have the most erect mics ever.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, bigger houses. You guys check it out. Dan and Shay, love you guys.
Love you, dude.